More to marketing. Welcome to More to Marketing, the podcast that explores marketing, product, and everything business. I'm your host, Susan Walsh, and today we're exploring the world of startup, but in particular, how to utilize sales and marketing together as your superforce. I have a special guest today I want to introduce everyone to, Matthew Whyatt. He is a distinguished entrepreneur, sales strategist, and also he is his own podcast host, which I will be putting in the show notes for everyone to be able to catch up and hear all about what he does as well. He has a huge expertise in the area of scaling software and technology companies. With a career spanning over 2 decades, so well over 20 years, he has consistently demonstrated a passion for helping businesses, particularly with their sales and marketing strategies, to really bring about significant growth and sustainable growth. Thank you so much, Matthew. I'm so excited to see you here today.
An absolute pleasure to be here, Susan.
Tell me a little bit more about yourself and your journey. How did you get where you are now?
Okay. Well, let me start with, I've always loved sales, and let's start with that. And so I was able to be part of some really interesting sales rooms back in my early career. Then started my first software business when I was 22. Started that business with my now wife, and over the course of those 25 years have grown that business. We exited, took some time off, lived in Bali, came back and did some general consulting around the place, working for some of the big four consulting firms, but for their startup part of their work. And for the last 4 years, I started a marketing agency about 4 years ago, actually in the middle of COVID, because what I was seeing is that marketing for our technology clients was quite bespoke, and the strategies used for selling an enterprise data warehouse to a global conglomerate is a bit of a different set of language that you might need for a general marketer to sell, e-commerce or those types of things. And so just by specializing, we were able to create a business that really encompassed the strategy for growth, the marketing, and then of course that all feeds back to my real passion, which is selling and engaging people. So there you go. That's hopefully I've given you a bit of a context of where I'm at.
No, and I love it, particularly that you brought in two areas that are normally so separate together, that powerhouse of the sales and marketing, because that is one thing a lot of businesses, even big businesses, keep siloed, and they really should be together and working together on their strengths.
Absolutely. That is a huge mistake that happens. And of course, the more radicalized the sales and marketing departments become, they go, well, instead marketing looks at sales and goes, oh, they're just doing lunch and golf and swanning about having conversations and vice versa. They think, oh, marketing's in the corner doing arts and crafts. And really, we need to bring those two departments together. The first version of this business was called Sales and Marketing Playing Nicely, Samplan, which was, I got to admit, possibly the worst name in history. So we didn't carry on with that name, but really the I guess the DNA of the idea, sales and marketing playing nicely, continues to be rolled out to our customers ongoing.
Definitely. And I think that's something to do with lots of the experiences that you've been through.
Mm.
What are some of those pivotal moments or experiences that have really shaped your approach to sales and marketing, particularly in the startup ecosystem that you've seen from COVID and beyond?
Yeah, okay. Well, look, back in the day when we were running our own ads for our own product, and what I noticed is we got to a point where we were able to start doing marketing maths. And marketing maths is, one unit of input. We would call it one unit of input. If it can produce 3 units of output, then it's profitable. And we found that one of the moments, one of the aha moments is when my marketing manager, really, really talented guy, changed a word and a comma in a Google ad and halved the cost of acquisition for our clients. And so what that really demonstrated to me is there's some flair for the execution of marketing, and there's a real value in doing that. But also then there's the day-to-day grind of marketing of really continuing to turn the dials and find the nuances that exist inside those messages and how we can better position ourselves in the marketplace. So that's one. And then really, when I'm talking to clients today, and even the last couple of months, I'll quote something that happened in the last couple of months, is they engaged us to do marketing. Oh, sorry, they engaged us to do sales. What we actually delivered was messaging, positioning, and communications framework We also changed the way they sell. They were doing just they would take meetings and just sell and take the next meeting and sell and hopefully sell software. And honestly, nobody really wants to buy software. What they
Mm,
want to do is they want to buy the outcome, but also they're very scared because in 2025, everybody's bought some software at some stage and been let down by it. And so the consequences of getting it wrong are usually higher than the value of implementing the software emotionally, maybe not financially, but
mm,
emotionally to the organization. So we need to think about how those people who we're selling to, we're not just selling B2B, because B2B is a logical process. What we need to think is H to H. It's a human process, human to human. And so we need to recognize that where businesses don't buy software, humans do. So therefore, we need to communicate to the human, recognize that they're in a position and what their goals and values and mission is, and align the customer's goals with the software that we might be selling. And so we did that, created some communication, did some really low tech stuff. We created a case study and then messaged it on LinkedIn. And that created a net $2 million worth of new business for that customer simply because it got the messaging right, the targeting right, and the execution right.
and all about just a simple case study explaining
Yep.
what they can do and how they help.
Mm, that's right. And positioning the case study from once again, it's not that we're the greatest, but how we actually spotlight the customer. So in all of our communication, we're not. So I got a client who manages tens, well, almost $100 million worth of work, but none of his websites said that. The website was all about compliance and process and auditing and better, faster, cheaper. And we're trying to throw away that positioning and say we manage more than $100 million worth of, I won't say exactly what industry it is, but more than $100 million worth
Mm,
of asset, of activity. And in doing that creates trust because I've often said to my clients and in the webinars that I do is the speed in which a business can grow is directly related to the speed in which you can develop and transfer trust.
mm, very powerful. And it's something that's hard to earn.
Very hard to earn and very quick to lose. You start
Extremely.
eroding trust uh, with some action, and that immediately creates
Mm.
problems for the business.
And I'm sure there's a lot of other common challenges that a lot of the startups face when it's talking to the sales team. Like trust is an internal factor as well between sales and marketing to overcome. But what are some of those other common challenges that you've seen when you're trying to scale up these sales teams to think more aligned so that they have that better outcome?
So one of the bigger challenges that I see is technology people think that, this is a wild generalization. So no pitchforks and burning, no burning my house down. I just want to be really clear. I'm generalizing here. So a lot of the times, the logic and process that has got a entrepreneur who's a technology entrepreneur to where they almost need to take that brain out and put a new brain in, which is a sales and marketing brain, and or they need to import or employ or find another co-founder that has that marketing and sales DNA because there's sales and marketing is a series of continual and never-ending experiments and it's like I was talking about my marketing manager, Steve, many years ago. He changed a comma and a word in a Google ad and doubled our rate of return for our ads, for our cost of acquisition. And so it is a continuous, never-ending improvement cycle. And the thing that I see is that way of thinking in the logical thinking that gets you to a point where you've built the best, the fastest, the cheapest solution for a client those three words, better, faster, cheaper, is possibly the worst way to position your product in the market.
Mm,
And so we need to bring that into a world where people start understanding it's an emotional connection or a psychological connection rather than a logical connection. And the challenge there is they employ a salesperson for an average salesperson, an average price, and they're disappointed by the below average returns they get because there's nobody for that salesperson to speak with. There's no support because it's all a logical bunch of developers, which is completely vital for a technology business to exist. But there's nobody else in that organization for them to speak to. So they get poor
mm,
results. They say salespeople don't work for us. They say marketing don't work for us. They make all these sweeping statements whilst their competition who is winning have deployed an excellent sales team, have deployed very effective marketing, and are continuing to scoop up market share. So it's the problems that exist are because of the internal challenges with those organizations around the attitude towards the psychological sales and marketing part of their business.
And a lot of them also feel, I find anyway, that sales and marketing sometimes are a bit like the evil part of the business, or they're
The
wanting to
icky
just
part.
keep changing things and they're not happy with what I develop. And they're not realizing that sometimes the sales and marketing people actually have the customer's voice in mind. So they're not
Yes.
coming in to change things just for the sake of it. It's because they need things to be massaged, pivoted, whatever it might be, to actually solve the problem the product or service needs to solve for.
That's right. But also, and yeah, 100%. And I've seen it a lot of times that the salesperson starts making the product the excuse. So I'm just trying to counterpoint to that is
Mm,
absolutely, and not but, and salespeople are also very easy to point, and marketing people are very easy to point at at the problems the software or the shortcomings the software has, not actually selling the outcome the software was designed to create, which causes, and I was the worst person. In my own businesses because I'm the salesperson, I'm in the sales room, I'm selling all day, and I would go to the product team and say, we need to now do this, this, and this. And so what would happen is they would get diverted. They would start chasing, secondary and tertiary goals where the primary goal is of the product and the service is in one direction. And thank goodness my wife is a part of the business. And essentially, I was banned from communicating with the product team and the software developers because
I love
I'd show
that.
up with good ideas because not only I can present a good idea, but also I'm reasonably convincing when I present a good idea, and I'm the boss of the company. So those three things combined, everybody goes, "Wow, well, this is the new set of direction."
Yeah, and it counteracts everything too because they've just got that trust in you
Yep.
because it's the assumption that you've already thought through everything and that it's your direction.
Yeah, I haven't thought it through. I tell you, that's a fact. Very rarely have I thought it through. So that's a real key there. So we
Mm,
need to make sure that we need to make sure there's sales um, management or DNA in the organization. I spoke with a client, a very well funded and exceptionally fast moving startup, and they've got capital, they've got runway, they're doing all the right things. The conversation though was, he said, I just need a salesperson. I said, what do you want to spend? And they were spending, a a very average amount. I said, what's the sales training process, scripts, marketing materials, sales assets? What's the ABM strategy? I said, what does it look like? He said, oh, no, the salesperson will do all that. I said, well, you're asking a salesperson, if you're asking a salesperson to act like a marketer, well, if you're going to find that individual who can do that, you're going to
mm.
be paying 5 times what you want to pay them because they're going to be a very senior, very experienced individual who can write email campaigns, who can
Developing
write
the whole
brochures.
thing. Yeah.
It's not possible.
Mm.
Well, it is possible if you're willing to spend a
Pay.
significant amount of
Yeah,
money.
exactly. And I, I find that that can sometimes be a problem for startups when they're strapped for cash, they're waiting for their next round to maybe start as well, and they're really struggling to try and nail it the right way, but again, not having that right DNA in place.
Hmm.
So, how can these startups leverage the limited marketing resources to achieve some of these really audacious and significant growths for their next stages?
Yeah. I just got off a call from I'll give you the same advice as I just got off a call from a client. So the story that I tell there is that when Airbnb was starting, these two very technical, very capable people were over in Silicon Valley. They'd raised the money. They'd started to it, and their one of their investors came and said, "How's it going?" And they had a conversation. I think it was Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn was the investor who had this conversation, and they said, well, we're just not scaling fast enough. We need to do more of this and more of that. And so, what's the blocker? And well, we need to get really good, high quality photos, and we need to put structure and rules and processes, so they were trying to solve it within the context of how they solve things, which is programmatically. And what Reed said is, well, that's all well and good, but here's a camera. Where are your main clients? Oh, they're in New York. Cool. Here's a camera. Go to New York, have a cup of tea, you take the photos. Oh, but that doesn't scale. He said, yeah, well, and so what happened is he forced them to do it, but by doing the photos, understanding the process of doing the photos, understanding the human element, the human part of that whole transaction, they did have cups of tea with their hosts. They did recognise what the problems were happening on the ground. They started to really create that, and they did take nicer photos. And what they did is they did the unscalable to scale. And so to bring that back to how a startup might be doing that is the unscalable. It's that single, that one-on-one communication. It's getting that first cohort of customers and doing an amazing job for them to then create the second cohort and the third and the fifth and the 10th is continuing to roll that out over time is make, if you can sell one, then you might be able to sell two, then you might be able to sell four, but you've got to make sure you can service those people really effectively. So do the unscalable, do the bit that actually seems like a counterintuitive move. Um, Go to those networking, go to those accelerators, show up at those accelerators, get a $30 a day desk in a technology accelerator in your capital city, and sit there and be part of the movement. Show up to those talks by those people, ask questions. It's that unscalable stuff that's going to give you the connections and the know-how to do the scaling.
And a lot of that's also about stepping through the customer journey, or in this case, the partner journey in the example you gave.
Yep.
Because unless you actually understand the journey itself, how can you actually solve for it or improve it?
Absolutely. And that's why the entrepreneurs that have been in the industry for 10 years and then turned around and found themselves solving a problem for that industry have way more context and capability than somebody who sees something from the outside and tries to solve it from the outside.
Mm.
So that, and then once again, it gives one, you've got the context, you've got the connections, and that gives you that ability to have those real customer feedback loop conversations about your new product, your new service.
And goes back to your point of continually to evolve.
Yep.
That gives you the ability to evolve because now you've got two customers, you can talk to two. Then you get four customers, you can talk to four. And that's how you can continually to evolve over time as well to get that scalability.
That's right. And communities are really powerful. There is a lot to be said for generating and building a community around your product, creating feedback loops, doing Ask Me Anything. So what I just said to this client just before is, they've got a huge cohort of clients. Some of them are paying support, some of them not paying support. Well, let's do an Ask Me Anything conversation where we open it up, open so have something to talk about every month, but then say, hey, if you're a client, ask me anything. And what that does is brings it to top of mind,
Mm.
creates that attention, because often people will go and find and buy a product that does the same thing or has the same capability as what your product has or the listener's product has, but they didn't realize they had that capability.
I think that happens so often in businesses, no matter what the tech stack is. There's an assumption that things don't change or don't have any additional plugins that might be added to them. I recently was talking to someone about an email platform. I won't name which one it was. And it was huge about 15 years ago. And it was stagnant for quite a long time. But in recent years, they've invested significantly into their technology. So they're not basic anymore. They are high tech at a really affordable price. But this person I was talking to was just like, oh, no, no, they're bad. Like, I used it 10 years ago. It's like, no, things evolve and change. Don't dismiss something from your opinion from 10 years ago. Have a look and see what they're now doing now because they've evolved as the needs have evolved of their customers. They might actually be able to tick all your boxes.
Yeah. And under the change management of going to new software and opening up your technology back end for
Mm.
a potential so all of those issues. So look at what your current software can do and your current partnerships can provide before looking externally. And people are constantly surprised about what they've already got.
And just ask the question. You're a startup, you probably don't have too much in a tech stack there. You probably only got a handful, maybe a dozen at the most. Ask
Mm.
them.
Yep.
Go to them and ask them and say, I've got this to solve for. Can you? Don't give them the solution, but ask them what you're wanting to do in your end piece. And they might be able to tell you that they can do it. Or they can recommend something that works really well with their platform.
Yeah, and that's once again goes back to the value of those accelerators and those networking
Mm.
groups. Hey, I need to solve for network shaping, or I need to solve for database management, and those answers are out there.
exactly. Now, in your experience, I know we've talked about this a bit, but how important is that alignment between the sales and marketing team from the startup point of view?
So I think about a sale as a relay race. So typically my customers are not finding the individual and selling to the individual. They're working through the process. They're communicating with projects. They're talking with finance. They're talking with operations. Then they might be talking to the C-suite. And so across all of those, everybody has a different set of values and a way of being measured inside the organization. So having one brochure or one way to position yourself on your website is causes a requirement to either be too broad, so you become a generalist. Therefore, nobody in an emergency calls for a generalist, and second of all, or gets too narrow and misses the mark. So we need to make sure there's a balance there. So I recommend they break up by industries. But to continue to talk about that, what we need to make sure is that there's the feedback loop between sales and marketing. So sales goes from projects to finance. They need to have those marketing assets to be able to hand to finance, because finance has a different set of desires, and
And they've
that's
also
really
got different jargon too, don't they?
different jargon, different requirements. You know, finance is always being told to do more with less.
Mm.
And so knowing that, very general statement, once again, very, very general statement, but knowing that, we need to position our marketing against that. Whereas projects or other departments are going to be are operating on different things. So CEOs always thinking about market positioning and reputation. So don't talk about reputation to the CFO, and don't really talk about doing more with less to the CEO.
Mm.
So that's where the combination of having the sales team is out there in the field and the marketing team supporting them with the appropriate lead generation, because marketing is the fuel that drives the engine of sales. If you've got sales, if you're sales heavy, you're not going to have enough um, fuel, and if you're fuel heavy, you're not going to have enough sales. So you need that balance of those two, because if you don't have them in balance, you're going to find yourself either, well, you're going to miss opportunities, and or you're going to miss the market completely.
And I think it's also important that they both hear each other's voices, because the marketing person or team, they're not on the ground with the salesperson and the customer. And depending on what they're trying to sell, whether it's product or service, sometimes it's worth bringing that marketing person across to that sales conversation just to see the landscape, to get a better understanding, because then their output is going to be better for the sales team because they've got a better understanding of it holistically.
Absolutely. So when I was running my businesses, and I encourage all of my current clients, is to run a sales and marketing meeting, not a marketing meeting, not a sales meeting. You run them both at the same time. Really understand what the salespeople are going through. Really understand what the marketing people are going through, and making sure that there's a reward system baked into the output we're trying to create, which is a sale. Um, Clicks, views, downloads, all of that stuff is a nice to have, but you can't buy your groceries with clicks.
Mm.
I can buy my groceries with revenue from sales. And so and that's the marketers need to not abandon those metrics, but align those metrics to a sale. And if you can't connect a click or a CAC, or whatever the metric is we want to measure, we can't connect that to a deal, then why are we continuing to do that? How does that play out? Now, having said that, that's my salesperson, business owner hat. Let me just change it to my marketer's hat. For the last 12 months, I've been doing a webinar every month. I release my podcast every week. That's very difficult to measure. What I have seen in the last 6 months of doing a podcast every week is that now I've got a waiting list of clients. And so, January and February are full. March is I've already sold half of my allocation that I can work with on new clients for March. So, and the funny thing is how I did that is, first of all, putting out content that I thought was going to be continually helpful. And second of all, publishing my capacity.
Yes.
I publish my capacity. I can work with two new clients a month. And beyond that, I have to push the next month.
Mhm.
And what that did is it created an expectation in the marketplace that had to go, well, Matthew doesn't, it's going to sound bad, but Matthew doesn't need me, which creates a position in the market where maybe I need Matthew.
And it's also that scarcity factor too,
Yep.
that your time is valuable
Yep.
and you can only commit to these times because you put 100% of yourself in for those two each month. So you're not
Yep.
stretching yourself too thin either. They're going to get that dedicatedness.
That's right. And smart clients will ask what capacity that people have got. Like smart clients, often enough I get asked, what's your capacity? How can you take on more than 5, 10, 15 clients, whatever the number is?
Mm.
And the answer is, well, we continue to grow our delivery cohort group of people who are able to deliver, whether it's through full-time or contractors. I'm the bottleneck in the organization because I do all the front end consulting with the client and work with my senior leadership team to
Mm.
develop the strategy. So I'm the bottleneck, and I'm okay with that bottleneck. That business is growing quite nicely at that speed that I'm growing at.
Yeah. And for this moment in time as well, until you decide to next phase, whatever it could look like.
Yep. Well, the
Exactly.
next phase is actually I'm starting a program, a hybrid program where I take everything that I've learned over 25 years, all the education we provide customers, templates, processes, technology, everything, tools, and putting it into a program where people can access that on a group um, style. And that's why I'm thinking more and more about community because I'm
Mm.
part of other ones like that, and they see the value of that community where you can ask a question into the group. And before the person who's supposed to be the expert can answer, other people are chiming in. And often the serendipity of experience occurs where they go, well, that person's actually really doing that right now. That's a better answer, or that's the best version of the answer I can get.
Particularly if with startups, with technology evolving, as we've mentioned already, having
Hmm,
their finger on the pulse means that they'll get the answer quicker and it'll be something more relevant to them now.
exactly.
I like that.
Because the thing is with AI, so answers need to be qualified and then people's energy needs to be directed. And this is the thing with AI and the world that we are in now. All the answers are out there. And if somebody was to go to any of my webinars, I do them every month. I give away all my IP. I'm not gatekeeping any of that information. And also, you can go to ChatGPT or Claude or any of the other AIs and ask me, what to give me a marketing plan for a technology business. The problem is that it's not nuanced. It's not in context. And also, if you got the answer easily, finding a different answer also comes easily.
Mm.
And what happens is people move through. I know this is not a video podcast, so I'll stop using my hands so much. Um, but if you imagine a flat line, and then when people start a new activity, whether it be a fitness program or a marketing program or anything, there's a valley of despair of results. And so what happens is they start a new thing, whether it's a launch program or a content marketing program or a Facebook, it doesn't matter. There's a valley of despair where the results actually aren't there. You're doing all the work, you're pedaling the bike, you're working, you're sweating, but the results not there. And unless there's some confidence and community and somebody to go, no, this is working. Look at these early stage or leading metrics rather than lagging metrics. Look at these things, stick to the plan, and what happens is you'll come out of it. But if you don't have the support, you don't have that structure, don't have somebody to talk to, you go valley of despair, chuck it in the bin, start a new thing, valley of despair, chuck it in the bin. So now we got, well, Facebook doesn't work for me, LinkedIn outreach doesn't work for me, going to networking doesn't work for me, cold sales calls don't work. So it's all doesn't work. So therefore they come to a position. And I've had this exact conversation with clients. They say marketing doesn't work in our industry.
Mm.
And you go, well, um, here are the top three people in the industry who are crushing you in every metric in relation to revenue, not product, because I can't judge product at the moment, but they're all doing marketing. They've all got sales teams. They're all executing. They're all doing these things. But what happens? They've gone through the valley of despair and come back out the other side, and they're reaping the benefits of planting those seeds early and not having any action until springtime when they can actually see it coming out of the ground. I
I
think I've used enough
completely.
metaphors there. I think I smashed about 15 different metaphors into one conversation.
I completely agree. I've seen it so many times, even just in general retail. If I use that as an example, uh, Christmas, lead up to Christmas time, I call it the donut effect myself personally,
Yep.
where you've invested so much money into your marketing for Christmas, you expect a high return, so you expect that big increase, big peak, and then that happens for maybe the last week of November, And then it crashes in the first week of December. And everyone goes to panic. They all panic.
Mm.
They panic. They start adding more discounts to discounts to discounts to discounts, more giveaways, blah, 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 blah. Because they see this big lull, that big hole in the donut, where if they actually looked at all the results from previous years, behavior of people is they're going to come in the week before Christmas and do the rest of their purchases because they're now being busy trying to finish up whatever there is, their work, kids going to school, whatever it might be. There's other things. And then it picks up again because everyone has to still buy presents before Christmas. Did you need to do that discount? Did
Yeah.
you have to do that added GWP? It's part of the cycle, and the
Yeah.
panic not necessary. And it happens year after year after year. When that lull that always happens every year, they now attribute it to, I must give deeper discounts if I'm going to get that other spike, which may not be the right answer.
And every dollar of discount is actually a dollar out of your own pocket from profit. It doesn't come from overall cost of goods. It actually comes from profit. So every dollar of profit is probably $3 or $4 to $10 of actual cost to the business because the person's still going to walk in and buy.
Yep.
Did the 25% off attract 200% more people? Because if it didn't, you've probably lost money.
Exactly. And there's so many businesses that don't think that through. And they may even be doing brand detriment
Mm,
to it as well, because now they're being seen as a discount brand where they might not naturally be that way inclined to. Or people
yep.
hold out intentionally because they understand the behavior.
Yep. Oh, well, there'll be discount coming up, or I'll buy it then, or I'll ask the question, and it just causes real problems. So and when selling software to business, there's always people trying to negotiate the terms, and I train my clients to negotiate rather than negotiate the price, negotiate the delivery, negotiate other things, the
Mm,
services, add more services, still maintain your price because you can always deliver services cheaper than the actual cash discount that you're going to offer.
that's a great
Uh, and if and
strategy.
if and if you can't, your pricing strategy is wrong.
Yeah. That's a fantastic strategy. Is there any other strategies that you can think of that the startups could employ to really help them have that more seamless collaboration between sales, marketing, or any other department as well?
When it comes to pricing, I think that you've got to set a price and be okay with it. But then also, if you want to bring in the first, so one of the early stage, so it depends on how early stage you're talking. If you're talking early stage products and services, I'll be looking to bring in an early cohort of customers where you provide them with if you are going to provide a discount. I've just gone on my little TED talk about no discounts, but if you do feel that you need to encourage the market to create a group of people who are buyers of yours, who have experienced your product or service, then I would be looking to say, well, to them, okay, well, I'm happy to, though the price is X, I'll do it for a fraction, whatever the fraction is of X. But what I need from you is a level of commitment, looking like X, Y, and Z, and I need to use you as a case study. And so
Mm,
you bring them on board as case studies. So you actually call them case study clients, and the way you work with them is through case study clients. Because the output of that is if you got a cohort of 10 clients, now you got 10 case studies about how you've transformed and created a transformation for that client. And that's a way of engaging with a early group of users to then create an early group. Because as I said, I might have said this earlier, but I'm not sure if I did. I'd say this often enough, but the speed in which you can grow is measured by how quickly you can build and transfer trust.
mm.
And so therefore, that those 10 case studies now gives you the ability to provide 10 versions of the truth, 10 versions of trust, where somebody can see themselves in that customer. Oh, I'm just like them. I liked it. They liked it. They got value out of it. Maybe I'll get the same.
Exactly. And it's so much rich content there that can be repurposed for so many different things, from the marketers utilizing it to the salespeople having it part of their kit. It's quite powerful. And then to go back and get future results from the same case studies is even more magical if you can get that too.
Yeah, a case study is usually my go-to video case studies because we're now living in the age of video. But written still works. Written for we're still you've got to remember that half the workforce and certainly a lot of the decision makers in the workforce are boomers. They're older than me. I'm claiming that I'm not a boomer, but half the businesses in the world, I think I said the other day, are owned by people over the age of 60. So then
Yeah,
why not communicate in the context in which they can consume it?
exactly. And because they're not used to the technology from the beginning, so much has changed for them too. So much is
Yep.
still changing. So that clear communication and whatever form they need it in is so vitally important.
Yeah. And if you're going to try to sell an enterprise data warehouse using TikTok dances, you're not going to make it.
I'd love to see someone try and do that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I won't even do, even though it's not a video podcast, I'm not even going to try what that looks like. So, but so think about, so I guess the point I'm making there is think about the context in which your customer is
Mm,
consuming the information and play to that game.
the
Yeah,
strengths, 100%.
yeah, exactly.
Now, I have enjoyed myself talking with you, but I do have one final question I ask everybody.
Okay,
And that question is, what brand, any brand in the world, best represents you and why?
goodness. What brand?
Can be one that's gone, can be one that's current.
So um, I like the example of Red Bull because it doesn't make sense. But then when you look at then if you reverse engineer it, it does make sense. So I was listening to Rory Sutherland talk, who's the creative director of Ogilvy Mather, and which is one of the biggest advertising people in the world. And he says, look, if you're going to come up with a competitor of Coke, the economists and the logical people would say, well, we need something that is cheaper, tastier, and in a bigger container. The actual competitor to Coke is something smaller, more expensive, and in blind taste tests is pretty disgusting. And so why does that resonate with me? Is because I'm a salesperson who's LARPing or who is pretending to be a marketer, who's pretending to be a salesperson, who then also at the same time is trying to be a strategist.
Love
And
it.
so that's how I think about it. Off the top of my head, that's my best answer.
I love that. Thank you so much. That was so much fun.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Susan.
Now, I'm just going to do a quick wrap up of the key things that I learned out of today's podcast. So just stick with me, Matthew. So,
Rightio.
today was all talking about startups, in particular, how sales and marketing can be used as a utilized force for good. Now, the one thing to always keep in mind, whether you're on the sales or the marketing side, is you're going to be ultimately dealing with humans. So, no matter what you do, ensure that everything is to that humanized voice and solving for that human you're going to talk to, because you're working together to be able to solve something for someone that will come back hopefully to you and want you to help them again in the future. Now, sales and marketing should work and unite together because they can help each other in so many different ways, from creating the right type of promotional materials through to finding the right people to actually sell to. It's important that they utilize everything and all their different skills together to be a united force. And this is where test and learn happens and really can help with creating both messaging and communication frameworks that you can dial up and down depending on your client's needs, but also the output itself. Ensure that when you're talking with all these potential new clients, that the sales and marketing team always look to add value, ensure they understand the goals, the mission, the landscape, and then bring in other elements like the psychological as well as trust, so that when they're talking to clients, it's authentic, because ultimately it's your brand on the line as well of the company. You want to make sure that the people you've got coming forward aren't robots and that it really is something that's intrinsic, that everyone really feels that they're part of this and that you're sharing it with everyone too. It's not always about being better, faster, cheaper. It's about actually listening to what's needed out there. And that's when the DNA of both your marketing and sales team combined can make that happen. Now, nothing happens overnight. It is a startup environment, so things take time. So, one of the key tips I got out of today was sometimes you have to do the unscalable to become scalable. And that's where you might go from one client, just one, my first one, yay. And then I got two, and then it goes to four, then it goes to eight. But every time you go through those new jumps, you evolve as well. You ensure that you're actually listening. You're actively out there trying to make things better. You're trying to find how to build that trust. And therefore, you will get the scalability over time with all those learnings. And that's where the technology will help you too with your teams internally. How do I get this? How do I find some of this information out? Well, it's about understanding how you can service efficiently and effectively, and about learning. So you might go and join some networks. You might join an accelerator and get a desk at one of those big groups and hear and be part of it. There's going to be talks there. There's people to question and ask. But probably one of the best places to start is if you do have that first one or two or four clients, talk to them. Have these sessions that are called Ask Me Anything and see what's actually on their mind. Have that open relationship and build it, because you're building that trust so that you can actually grow along with the needs in the right way that you need to for your business. Now, if I step back into the business and I think about the sales and marketing people, make sure that whatever you create as part of your salary packaging, whatever it might be, that the reward system makes sense as well. And then also when I'm looking at the client's needs, that they're being measured the right way. We heard very clearly from Matthew that you cannot feed your family on clicks. It's so true. It's on sales. But we also need to, in this digital age, make sure that everything is trackable. So it's extremely important that any activity out there, and reverse engineer that to the sale, does the sale get attributed back to something? What is working? Have we given it enough time? Haven't we given enough time? You don't copy competitors. You have to do things differently yourself as well. So don't trust that they're doing it right either. But make sure that everything is attributable, because then you can actually grow and your sales and marketing team can unite and actually see it happening together. Ultimately, though, one of the best ways to build out your capabilities where you're using sales and marketing together is with your future and new clients, and that is doing case studies. By getting them to agree to case studies, that can help you not just maybe instead of giving away a discount, you give away a brand instead, where you can grow together and build up the reputation together. But you can actually hopefully build more trust out there where people can see who's working with you and what they're getting resolved and solved for. And they might be able to put themselves in those shoes. But ultimately, sales and marketing, you aren't the enemies of each other. You should work together because you can achieve greatness, even in the startup landscape. When you start with trust, start there and you can do almost anything. Matthew, anything else to add?
No, that was an amazing wrap up. You've nailed it. Nothing more to add.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for your time. Now, Matthew does have his own podcast that he drops, the CEO and the Salesman podcast. He is the salesman. I'll make sure to add that into the show notes so everyone can check that. Sorry, I just had a door slam. I don't know if it came through.
I heard it. You want to do that again?
I'm going to redo that one. Don't forget, you can follow Matthew on LinkedIn, and he also has his own podcast, the CEO and the Salesman podcast. He happens to be the salesman. I'll make sure to include that in the show notes so that you don't miss out, and make sure you listen to every episode as well, because there's going to be lots of fabulous bits of advice in there. As Matthew has said, he shares his IP openly, and it's so beautiful to see that. And if you've got questions, please reach out to him as well yourself. Everyone else, don't forget to follow More to Marketing to listen to all the future fabulous guests. And don't forget to make any comments as well.
More to Marketing.